Hey there everyone, welcome to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. Okay, so we're going to try and do something a little different here for our Wednesday night favorites. I'm going to do, I don't know what you want to call it. These are my five bands that I first started listening to all their stuff at once. So I'm going to call this my favorite runs by my favorite bands. That's what I'm going to call it. Not necessarily my favorite bands, but you'll know what I'm getting at. I may change the title when I write it, I'm not sure. But anyways, so I'm going to do these in kind of a chronological order. So the albums will all be in chronological order, and when this band impacted me will be in chronological order, if that makes sense. So two of the first three are all pretty known to me as to who was first in the run and who was second, who was third. The other two, I'm not quite sure which one I discovered first, but at any rate, you'll get the message when you hear it. Okay, so the first one out of the blocks, and I don't need my glasses, I don't even know why I have them on, will be this band here, of course. And we're talking about Kiss. So for those of you who don't know, Kiss was the very kind of first band that I really got into. Yes, I did listen to some BTO. I did have a K-Tel album with some Black Sabbath and April Wine on it, and there might have been a few other bands in there that I'd heard over the time. But this was really the band that set rock music on its way for me. And from about, I'm going to say from about 75, it was either late 75 or late in the summer of 75 till about the mid 1978s. So maybe going back to school in 78, which would have put me in, God, I don't even know what that would have put me in. That's pretty scary. I think it was the beginning of my grade 8. I think it was my grade 8 year. So we had moved downtown, away from where I was, away from the record stores and all that, and that's when I started to explore different music and got myself into, initially there was like 4 bands that I was listening to a lot. And the first one, of course, was Kiss. They were easily the best. So I'm going to talk about the run of albums that I think are untouchable in some ways for me. I really enjoyed all of them. I listened to them a ton, all of them. I've included 2 live albums from Kiss here because Kiss is that band whose live stuff really is the definitive stuff by them. Whereas the other bands, I think it's more the studio albums, so I didn't include the live albums from them, just from Kiss. So, of course, I'm going to do this chronologically. So we have Kiss, the debut album. This is a great album, even though it's kind of really raw and has a lot of not such good sounds to it in some places. It still has a list of all-star songs, these greatest hits almost. Strutter, Nothing to Lose, Firehouse, Cold Gym, then you got Deuce, you got 100,000 Years on this, and Black Diamond. I think all of these tracks, if I'm not mistaken, all 7 of these tracks were on the live version, which was the definitive version for all of the songs. But still some good stuff on this one. I love the album cover. It's kind of them at the beginning, and they're kind of still developing their makeup, and they're still raw sounding as hell. Then they moved to this album, which is a step up. But this album's kind of murky. It's shitty production. The sound system isn't so great on it. It's raw, yes, but it sounds like it's not that great of a sound. But it has some really great songs on it. Got to Choose, Parasite, Going Blind, Hotter Than Hell, Let Me Go, Rock and Roll, All the Way, Watching You, Mainline, Coming Home, and Strange Ways. The whole album is deplete with great songs. A lot of these, Got to Choose, Parasite, Hotter Than Hell, Let Me Go, Rock and Roll, Watching You, And Strange Ways? No, it's not. All those songs are all on the live album, but the Strange Ways, Coming Home, Mainline, and All the Way are all fantastic deep cuts from this album that didn't make that live cut and probably should have. This is a great album musically, and the songs are great, but production-wise, pretty shitty. But still, I love the album. It's probably my favorite of the studio albums. Okay, next up is this strange contraption of an album here with them dressed in suits. I'm not really sure what they're trying to project here, and just in case you didn't get enough of that, you get to see the negative on the back. So anyways, this has another 10 tracks. Says that seems to be the magic number for this, guys. Another raw sounding album. This one's a little thin sounding. So you get this one, which is very raw sounding. You have this one, which is kind of murky sounding, and then you get this one, which is kind of thin sounding. But you have Room Service, Two Timer, Ladies in Waiting, Getaway, Rock and Roll, Rock Bottom, Come On and Love Me. You got She, you got Rock and Roll All Night, of course. So some of the deeper tracks like Room Service, Room Service actually ended up on a live recompilation at some point, I believe. Where is it? Rock Bottom, Come On and Love Me, and all Rock and Roll All Night were all on that live album. All great definitive versions of those songs too. Ladies in Waiting and Room Service, and She was also on that live composition. I forgot about that. Yeah, so you got some really solid stuff here. This is maybe the weakest of the first three, but still not a bad album at all. Not a bad album. When we do the live album, Kiss Alive is to me the best Kiss album out there. It has all the definitive versions of all of the songs. On disc 1 you got Deuce, Strutter, Got to Choose, Hotter Than Hell, Firehouse, Nothing to Lose, Come On and Love Me, Parasite, She. And I do remember, I don't think I said Black Diamond, and I do not see it on here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. And that was on the original album, I'm sure of it. Yeah, it's the last track, and I didn't mention it, so there you go. So anyways, you got this. This was a great definitive versions of all these songs. Watching You, 100,000 Years, Black Diamond, Rock Bottom, Cold Gin, Rock and Roll All Night, and Let Me Go, Rock and Roll. And I think it's pretty much the best versions of all these songs are on this album. I love the cover. I love this kind of shot here. I know it's probably not a live album, but it's still a great album. Okay, so now we get into the second set of Kiss albums that make up this run. Kiss Destroyer, I've already done a video on this, so I'm not going to say too much about it. Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder, where is it? Shout It Out Loud and Beth are all on the live version, and then the deeper cuts like Do You Love Me, Sweet Pain, and Flaming Youth, and King of Nighttime World's also on that as well. Flaming Youth, those are all great deep cuts. This is a great album. Then you get this album, which I think is even better, and it's more raw sounding. This one's more produced and symphonic sound. It has a lot of that kind of orchestral sound to it, where this doesn't have. It's more of a raw sound, but a much better production raw sound. One of the better produced albums. I Want You, Calling Dr. Love, Hard Luck Woman, and Making Love were all on the live Kiss Alive. Really good versions. I think some of the versions are a little better on this one though. That album, that Kiss Alive 2, great album, but it tends to be a little bit louder than it's almost like it's forced out, and that's sometimes the way I get from that one. Mr. Speed, another great deep cut. Ladies Room, another deep cut. Take Me, another deep cut. Love 'Em and Leave 'Em, which was one of my favorite Gene Simmons covered tracks. Great cut. This is a great album. This was one of their weaker ones from that. Kind of matches Dress to Kill. The album cover is fantastic though. I think it's even better than the Destroyer one myself. I just like the mystic kind of look of it, and having all the women with the makeup on as well. Fantastic. So it has I Stole Your Love, Christine 16, Shock Me, Love Tomorrow and Tonight, and where is it? Love Gun, yeah. Those are the tracks from the live version. They're all really good on the live version. Pretty good here too. They're not bad. I Stole Your Love might be my favorite song off of this album. I love Christine 16 as well. Where is it? The rest of this is a little bit weaker than some of the other albums. They've got some songs that are not so great on here, but overall it's still a pretty strong album. Then we do this one, which has the definitive versions of most of the songs I've already said on these 3 albums. And then you also have a 4th side with All American Man, Rockin' in the USA, Larger Than Life, Rocket Ride, and Any Way You Want It. So Rocket Ride and Larger Than Life, probably the best 2 tracks on that grouping there on the back 4, on the 4th side, or in this case the 2nd disc. So yeah, this is another really good one. I love that pictures. I love these. They did a real good job on these shots too. I think they're great. They really really captured the essence of the 4 of them. Fantastic album. And I just threw this one in too because this kind of end of an era for me. I actually like this album. Cover withstanding, not great, but it's got some good songs on here. I know there's the disco song I Was Made for Loving You, but after that, 2000 Man, Sure Knows Something, Dirty Living, Hard Times, Save Your Love, all fantastic tracks. This is a good album. A bit poppy, but still a pretty good album. And so that ends the Kiss run, which is the longest run of them, I think, for me. And was the first kind of run for me. So I got into that music. I didn't get them all at the same time, but I appreciate that entire run of music there. So then the next one for me was Queen. I got into Queen next because a little bit of a glam thing there too. So they seemed a logical fit for me. So there's only 3 of them though that I really like that are in this run. And I'm not even sure which way they go. I think it's this way. I think it's A Night at the Opera, followed by A Day at the Races, followed by News of the World. So this has some really good songs in it, of course. Again, it's like a menage of a lot of different styles and different textures and stuff of music. It's just a fantastic album. Lazy on a Sunday Afternoon, I love that. Death on Two Legs, fantastic tune. You're My Best Friend, everybody knows that one. I'm in Love with My Car, that's a strong Queen song. I like the Seaside Rendezvous, as weird as it sounds. Bohemian Rhapsody, what can you say about that song that hasn't already been overplayed? And then you got, this is just a great album. I love the cover, Night at the Opera, and then you have Day at the Races, which is a very similar album, but it's kind of funny how this is Night at the Opera, but it's white, and this is Day at the Races, but it's black, right? So you have Tie Your Mother Down, fantastic track. Where am I? You Take My Breath Away, it's a good, really solid track. White Man, which may be one of my favorite Queen songs. This just Millionaire Waltz, You and I, is just really, and Somebody to Love, that was the track I was trying to find. Yeah, this is just replete with great stuff. Fantastic, and very similar in context to these 2 albums are very similar. Lots of different soundscapes, not just one style of music, and they'll continue that with this album, News of the World, which is probably my favorite of the 3 albums. This has, of course, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Sheer Heart Attack, which was the title from another album. This one's a real raunchy, hard, heavy song. Spread Your Wings, another great track. Get Down, Make Love. Who Needs You, another great track. It's Late, I love that track. Where's the one I'm looking for? Fight from the Inside, that's probably my favorite track on this album. Such a heavy, pulsing song, fantastic track. So there you have it, Queen, with their 3-album run for me. I mean, other people you may want to include jazz, or you might want to go back in the discography. I never really did. I don't mind those albums, I just never really got into them too big time. Day at the Races, Night at the Opera, News of the World. Okay, next up. So that was fairly quick. This next one's going to be a little bit longer too, just because I have 2 basic runs here. So the first run, first of all, you have to know I got into, this is Black Sabbath. I got into Black Sabbath from the Heaven and Hell. I immediately went backwards and started listening to this Aussie era stuff. I cannot find my debut album. I know I had it. I was looking at it the other day. I must have put it down and didn't put it back. Anyways, a great album, kind of a heavier album, more a lot of kind of heavy bluesy sound to them, but a dark album. Really a great debut album. It's not one of my favorite Sabbath albums, but I still like it. So then we move on to Paranoid, which I did this week on my Monday night show. This has got a lot of really strong Sabbath songs on it. Side 1 is probably a master album side. War Pigs, Paranoid, Planet Caravan, and Iron Man. I like them all. 2 of them I don't want to hear ever again. I've heard too much of. Side 2 is really good too. Electric Funeral, one of the stranger Sabbath songs. Hand of Doom, which is I think very underrated. Rat Salad's not one of my favorites, but it's a good for what it is. And Jack the Stripper or Fairies Wear Boots, if you want, is one of those classic songs I love. So then the next album up, of course, is probably my favorite of the original set of albums, which is Master of Reality. This has Sweet Leaf and Children of the Grave, which are the 2 big ones on here. After Forever, I think, is a real crunching song. I like Embryo. It leads up to Children of the Grave, really good. Orchid, I like that a lot. Lord of this World is different. Solitude is one of my favorite Sabbath songs, and definitely one of my favorite on this album. And Into the Void, really good. Roger Bain again producing this. Fantastic album. I love the cover of that too, so dark and murky. Such a heavy album, eh? Then you get to this one, which is heavy but has some weird different sounds to it as well. Black Sabbath Volume 4, Wheels of Confusion. Then it has the great Tomorrow's Dream. Changes, which is a kind of a big hit for them, but kind of not really a Sabbathy type song, but I don't mind it. You got Supernaut, another heavy track. Snowblind and Cornucopia, great tunes. I love Laguna Sunrise. I like the acoustic bit, which gives this album a little bit of a different feel. And yeah, just a fantastic album. This one was Patrick Meehan with them. Great album. Then you get to this one, which is almost a masterpiece on its own. It's so good. Very different too. It's not like anything else they did. I don't think they've done anything like this since either. So you got Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and probably, where is it? Killing Yourself Deliver, the 2 heavy tracks on the album. Probably the most well-known 2 tracks as well. A National Acrobat, great tune. Sabracadabra with Rick Wakeman on the keyboards, fantastic. Looking for Today, I really like that as well. And then Spiral Architect is another song I like quite a bit. And this one was produced by Sabbath on their own. So that ends the first 5 album run. And then we have a 4 album run that occurs later for them. Starts with this album, which I know many people do not like. It's a little thin sounding, I do give you that, but the songs are all good. Never Say Die, Johnny Blade, Junior's Eyes, and A Hard Road. Those are 4 of my favorite Sabbath songs, and I love all of them. They're great. Backside, maybe not so good. I do like Air Dance a bit, and Swinging the Chain is a little bit different, so I don't mind that one. But the first 4, top shelf for me. Then you move on to, arguably, this is one of my favorite albums. It's definitely my favorite Sabbath album, Heaven and Hell. That's a nice, the cover's a little bit different, but I like this kind of portrait of the 4 of them. I like that a lot. You know, this has Neon Nights on the first side. Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, Lady Evil, and Heaven and Hell. All great tracks. Neon Nights was for a long time my favorite Sabbath song. Wishing Well is one of my favorite ones to sing, as well as Die Young. And then there's the two little bit weaker tracks, Lonely is the Word and Walk Away. Yeah, not the greatest, but this was produced by Martin Birch too, so it's really strongly well-produced album. Then you get Black Sabbath's Mob Rules, which some people like even better and think it's a much better album. I am not as keen on it, but I still do like it. Turn Up the Night, it's kind of a Neon Nights type song. Voodoo I liked a lot early on. Sign of the Southern Cross I think is one of their epic classic songs. Then you got the Mob Rules, of course, from the movie. Heavy Metal, another great tune. Country Girl, very underrated, and Slipping Away, both very underrated songs, I think. And Falling Off the Edge of the World, pretty good and over. So it's just replete from the top to bottom. The album cover is nice. Another Martin Birch album. And then the last one in that set, and for Sabbath in my run of getting into Sabbath, which is this album, Born Again. Yeah, it's murky, not great sounding. Album cover is questionable. This is even more questionable to me. But it's just replete with some really great tracks, and I think, to my way of thinking, I think Ian Gillan is screaming up a storm, and I don't think he sang better than he ever did on this particular album. That's just my opinion. Trashed, great tune. Disturbing the Priest, and you got that little Stonehenge part between them, which is pretty good too. Disturbing the Priest is probably my favorite song on the album. Zero the Hero is kind of a different track, but I like it. Digital Bitch and Hotline, those are real hard, straight away rockin' songs. Probably don't belong on this Sabbath album. They got a little bit of a Deep Purple sound to them, those two. Born Again, fantastic song. And then Keep It Warm, which I think is the most underrated track on the album. But this is a great album. I love it. So there you have it. There's Sabbath. So that's 3. We got 2 to go. Next 2 aren't as big. Well, maybe that's not true. One of them isn't that big. So this one, I got them backwards here. Give me a sec. So this one is a 5 CD album run here. This is a band that I got into, and I got into them, and I just absolutely love their vocal harmonies. I love the 3 vocalists that they have. I think that their music is great. There's so many great songs on all these albums. So we're going to start out with Styx's Equinox, which is the last album with John Klulowitzki. This has Light Up, great track. Then it has your Radio Stables and Lorelei and Sweet Madam Blue, fantastic songs. I love Born to Run, Born for Adventure, such a fantastic song. And Lonely Child's probably my deep cut favorite on this album, but this album is probably right up there near the top for my favorite Styx albums. Then we get the first album with Tommy Shaw on it. Another great album. I don't think this is as good as the Equinox, but it's a pretty solid album. Mademoiselle, really great track. Crystal Ball, I think this is one of the this is maybe the best Tommy Shaw song. I'm not sure. I think it is. Old Man I like quite a bit too, and Put Me On, I like that a lot. The rest of the tracks a little bit weaker. I don't mind them. I don't like them as much. Then you come to this album, which is next up. Some people say this is their Opus Magnus. I'm not going to disagree with that. Biggest selling album for them for sure. A lot of really great tracks on here and stables for Styx. The Grand Illusion, Fooling Yourself, Come Sail Away, and Miss America are all songs that you will hear on the radio a lot. Superstars, maybe a little bit underrated song there. Man in the Wilderness and Castle Walls are probably the 2 best prog songs that this group has ever done. It's a fantastic album, The Grand Illusion. So we get to my favorite album. This is my favorite album, period. Not just my favorite Styx albums, my favorite album. It's been that way for about 2 or 3 years now. Took over from another group not too long ago, and I just love everything on this album. There isn't a bad song on this album. The radio songs, Blue Collar Man, where is it? I'm Okay. Well, maybe not so much on the radio now. Renegade, those are all big, big songs. But my favorites, Pieces of Eight, Lord of the Ring, and Great White Hope, all fantastic. Sing for the Day, they're all fantastic. And of course, my personal favorite song on this album, Queen of Spades, maybe my favorite song, period. Just a great, great album. And then this one here, maybe weaker than the other four, quite a bit weaker in some cases, but lots of good vocal harmonies on this. Lots of different sounding, some real kind of first-rate kind of storytelling too. Why Me? I like that. I Can Do Without Babe, but Boat on the River I love. I think they use a lot of different instruments on that. Very great vocal by Tommy Shaw there. First Time I like that, and Love After Midnight, I think, or Love in the Midnight, really, really great. And then the other song that only in recent times I've really grown to like a lot is Eddie, telling about the story of Edward Kennedy, which I really enjoyed on this album. So this album, maybe not as good as the other four, but still deserves to be on this list. Well, there you go, Styx. One more to go. This is not going to be a surprise to anybody at all, certainly not to me. And I got them all backwards again, of course. And we're talking about my band, Rush. And we start out with this album, Fly By Night. Love this album. Loved it since the first time I heard it. Still love it. Still listen to it. Great album cover. Great tracks. Anthem, one of the great Rush songs of all time. Best I Can, I love that track. Was originally supposed to be on the first album, but it sounds a lot better with Neil's drums on this. Bytor and the Snow Dog, one of my favorite Rush lengthy songs. Fly By Night and Making Memories are two of those kind of more acoustic rock radio friendly songs that I've always liked by Rush. And in the end, another great tune on this album. And this begins the run. Next up album, an album I like almost as much as that one. Has a lot of people not so keen on this album, but I think it's great. I think it just was not at the right time in the right situation for this band. It does have a little bit of a quirky sound to it, but it has some very memorable songs on it. Bastille Day, fantastic tune. Lakeside Park's probably my favorite Rush song, period. The Necromancer I love because it tells that story about, and it reminds me of Toronto and the Don River area and the Willowdale, and that whole area that I grew up in. And The Fountain of Lambeth is my favorite long, epic Rush song. I just love it. I love Panacea and Bacchus Plateau are my two favorites on this album. Just a great album. Then we get to an album I'm not as keen on as a lot of people are. I know people don't understand that. I personally, other than the title track, 2112, which is a great track with lots of great stuff on it, and Passage to Bangkok, which is another really solid track. The other songs are, I don't mind any of them. I like Lessons, Twilight Zone, Something for Nothing, and Tears. I like all four of them. It's not as big hits for me or songs that I would listen to a lot. Never really got into this in a big, huge way, but I still appreciate the magnitude of this album. Many people feel that may be their best album. I'm not going to argue them. This is a classic prog metal album, or prog rock album if you prefer. At one time it was definitely Cinderella Man, Xanadu, and Cinderella Man and Xanadu were my two big ones. Then I grew into Farewell to Kings, which is probably right up there with Xanadu is my favorite on this album. Cygnus X1 took a while for me to get into, but I do like it. Mad Rigel and Close to the Heart are just solid tracks. But I love the cover of the album. I just love the whole feel and sound of this album. I think it's just a fantastic album. And getting even better with this one. For a long time, Farewell to Kings I liked more, but I think I like this one more. It only has the 4 tracks, but the 3 back tracks, Circumstances, Trees, and La Villa Strangado, just amazing songs. All 3 of them. I love them all. The Trees is probably one of my favorite underappreciated songs. La Villa gets a lot of airplay on YouTube and stuff, and it's just a great tune. And then you have the side 1 track with the Battle of the Heart and the Mind in Cygnus Book 2 Hemispheres. Yeah, fantastic album. Then we get probably my favorite Rush album. This is Permanent Waves. Sorry, I was going to say something else. Permanent Waves, get it straight, was my first owned Rush album. I listened to it a lot. It became my first, had a big impact on me. I loved that one time. I loved all the songs, kind of down to just Natural Science and Free Will. Now those are basically the only 2 I really kind of listen to much anymore. Just kind of burned it out, I played it so much. And then we get to what people say is their magnus opus, the Moving Pictures album, which I've been trying to say, but I'm not supposed to. Has a lot of really good stuff on it. Has a lot of different sounds to it. It kind of encompasses all the eras that were gone and coming. Like that, there's enough metal on it. There's enough prog on it. There's enough synths on it. It's got a little bit of everything, and done at an exceptionally good quality level. Tom Sawyer, I liked it. I don't want to hear it no more, though. I had enough. Red Barchetta, I never disliked it. I never really loved it. I never really disliked it. I just liked it. It's maybe a little overplayed, but it's not as bad as Tom Sawyer. YYZ, I think it's a lot overplayed, but I still think it's a great tune. Limelight was not one of my favorite songs on the album. I don't mind it. I get why it's so big, but it's just not my favorite. I actually enjoy, Camera Eye was a song that I've grown to like more as time goes on. Witch Hunt, I never really cared for it. I still don't really care for it. I find it an interesting track, but it's not one of my favorite. And Vital Signs, which is probably my favorite track on this album, and has been my favorite track on this album probably since the beginning. I just think it's very different. It's not like anything else they've done, and I just think it's great. So there you have it. That ends the run for Rush and the run for me. So for those of you keeping track, Kiss was my initial band with their 8-album run. Then you had Black Sabbath with kind of 2 runs, one of 5 albums, one of 4 albums. Or actually, it was Queen was next. Yeah, Queen was next with their 3. Some people would add some to either side, but for me, that's what I listened to at the time. Those were the 3 I wanted to hear. Those are the 3 I got into. Then you got Black Sabbath with their 2 runs, one of 5 albums, the initial 5 albums, and then 4 albums later. A couple albums later, and then they started a 4-run album for me, and I really like that. Probably like that actually more. So I included both. Then you got your Styx 5-album run, going from Equinox all the way up to Cornerstone. And you know what? They're all fairly different sounding albums too. Like there's none of the 2 of them really sound a lot alike. Then you have Rush with their 7-album run, going from Fly By Night all the way to Moving Pictures. At one time, I probably would have included Signals on this, but it's kind of faded too much to be still part of that run for me. But I still love all these albums. And Rush is another band that all their albums sound vastly different in such a short period of time. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this run. It's a little longer, this video, than I had anticipated it being. But I think it was fun to do for me. I hope you enjoyed watching it. These were my 5 runs for me initially when I got into music. I may do another one of these. I have another 5 bands that were all part of this kind of developing music interest for me, came out after this, that I may do the runs for them as well, but we'll see what happens. I hope you enjoyed this, and please like and subscribe, and we'll be back next Wednesday. Next Wednesday night for another favorites. So take care and have a good day. Bye.